It was the two oldest brothers, one that's 5 years older than me and another one who is 9 years older than me, that betrayed me and the family, and they sexually abused me at different times of my life from the ages of 7 to 12. Their threats after every assault, they would say, "This is what brothers and sisters do, but it's our little secret. And if you ever tell, you're going to be an orphan. They'll abandon you because you're dirty. They won't believe you." You know, the typical threats that a perpetrator will do.
Right.
Little Darlene deserved the truth to be heard. And frankly, all survivors need to see someone who won in court. And on January 29th, 2024, a 6-day trial about this begins.
Hello and welcome to Ego Was Here. Today I'm joined by Darlene Lekowski, author, speaker, and survivor's advocate. After decades of silence, she is using her voice to shine a light on sibling sexual abuse and the lifelong journey of healing. Hello, Darlene.
Hi, Anna. Thanks so much for having me.
It's an honor to have you. And, you know, it's a big thing that you're sharing your story. Because I'm sure that there are many people out there that are suffering in silence. So, you know, it's a great thing to come forward with such, you know, amazing and difficult life stories. So, Darlene, before we talk about everything you've survived, I'd love for people to meet the little girl you were.
Mm.
If I had known 7-year-old Darlene, how would you describe her?
Oh my goodness. You're going to bring tears to my eyes. 7-year-old Darlene was full of hope, full of ambition, full of life. And I never lost that life and that hope. And when you hear my story, you'll understand why I kept it silent for 50 years. Because when you have sexual abuse within the family, the dynamic is so incredibly crazy. But I was very athletic. I was very tiny. I am the youngest of 5 children born in the 1960s. And I just had a wonderful life. I mean, I grew up in what they called the country club crowd. So, you know, dad had free country club memberships, the company car. Mom owned a Christian bookstore. You know, it was all about image and, you know,
Yes.
living in nice neighborhoods and having nice things growing up. But I loved 90% of my family and I didn't want to lose that or give that up. It was the 10% that was tainted that forced little Darlene to be put in a box.
So you said that you were the youngest of 5 children. What was
Yes.
your place in the family?
So my oldest sister was 10 and a half years older than me. So by the time I was 7, she was 17 and out of the house. So we didn't really know each other when my abuse started, but we became very close as adults. I have one brother who's 2.5 years older than me. He was like my best friend in the family growing up. We did everything together. It was the two oldest brothers, one that's 5 years older than me and another one who is 9 years older than me, that betrayed me and the family. And they sexually abused me at different times of my life from the ages of 7 to 12.
So looking back now, do you think you felt safe simply because you were a child or because you truly believed nothing bad could happen inside your own family? There
Um,
were there any signs?
no, and that's the thing about sibling sexual trauma and abuse. It's the former icky word called incest.
Hmm
They say it's not like traditional child abuse. Even though it's believed to be the most common form of child sexual abuse in the world, it is the least talked about because of the threats that the abuser makes. And it's typically the older sibling who's abusing the younger sibling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I didn't feel safe in my house. And I created strategies finally at 9 years old, to stay out of that house and create a new Darlene to try and stop getting abused as much as I could.
So if I could watch a normal day in your childhood before the abuse began, what would I see? Everything seemed normal.
Yeah. Yeah. You would see a very happy girl. You would see lots of friends. We were in a neighborhood in a town outside of Buffalo, New York, where I believe, and it's been validated by other girlfriends I had in that neighborhood, that we moved into a neighborhood where sibling sexual abuse was already happening with other neighbors, because now
Okay.
there's two other women who have become public and so, oh, well, my brothers were abusing me too. I think my brothers learned it from the neighbor boys.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
they say that it's more about older siblings collaborating with people their same age. The hormones are flying. They get exposed to pornography and they just go after the most innocent, vulnerable person in the family to let their stuff out, if you will. And I
mm-hmm,
believe that's
mm-hmm.
why they targeted me.
So, Darlene, you said that the world betrayed me at
Mhm.
7. What do those words mean to you today?
So, as we talked about, as a little girl, I was full of love, full of life. Nothing could harm me. I just had everything in the world possible provided to me. So innocent, so young. And then, bam, out of nowhere, my oldest brother, who was 9 years older than me, I'm walking down the hallway to go to my girlfriend's house, pulls me into his bedroom and makes me witness him doing things to himself. And I can remember during that moment where he was sitting on top of me to force me in the room, where I completely left my body. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, brothers are supposed to love and protect and take care of their little sister.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, they fully betrayed me and sexually abused me, and I had no idea what was going on.
And how often was that happening?
So, because of the tactics and strategies that I deployed at such a young girl, and I'll talk about
Mhm.
that, Anna, what I did so that I wasn't getting attacked, because there are stories of men and women who sadly, or little boys and little girls, I should say, were getting abused every single day after
Mhm.
school as latchkey children. For me, even though my mom was a stay-at-home mom, I mean, she had 5 kids. We were all very athletic, all out doing things. And one of the tactics that I deployed was, well, if I'm a tomboy, so I asked her to cut my hair very short, and
Mm.
I became a tomboy because I figured, well, if I don't look like a girl, maybe my brothers will stop coming after me. And then I also decided I'm going to become crazy athletic and join every single club and sport I possibly could, because the more I'm at sports and practices,
Mhm.
the less likely I'm ever going to be alone in that house. And then the third tactic I deployed was, I need to be popular, because if I have lots of friends, then I'm going to get invitations to birthday parties, to slumber parties.
Mhm. Mhm.
So for me, I believe those tactics worked somewhat. I mean, it was survival mode. I remember getting sexually assaulted 6 times over 5 years. So about once a year, it would happen to me. And that's where it became so hard, because you never know when it's coming.
Of course, of
So,
course.
yeah, you develop this guard and safety net, and I became incredibly controlling, afraid of the dark, afraid of being alone anywhere at any time.
Do you think that your brothers knew, about the fact that both of them were abusing you?
That's such an interesting question. So, when it became public in 2021, both of them claimed they had no idea the other one was doing it, because it did happen at different times. So, the brother who was 9 years older than me, that started when I was 7 and 8, and he did it twice. And then he moved out of the house. And then the brother 5 years older than me, he started when I was 9, a year later. So it could be they didn't know, but I'm telling you, remember I told you about those girlfriends out of Buffalo, New
Yes,
York?
yes, yes, yes.
Since I've gone public, they've told me they have memories that I don't have anymore because the trauma isn't allowing me. But they're like, we remember an incident when we were very uncomfortable with both of your brothers and we ran away. But you
Um,
were sadly inside the tent and we think
mm.
something did happen to you.
Yeah, because it's weird, two brothers in the same home
Yes.
doing the same
Yeah.
thing. It
Yes.
doesn't
That's why I
usually
think they
happen.
learned it from neighbor boys. You know what
Yes,
I mean?
yes, yes. Did you understand what was happening to you, or did it only make sense years later?
I knew all along what was happening to me. I didn't comprehend it fully, what it really meant. But once it became actual rape, and that didn't happen till I was 9, so I was sexually assaulted, very physically violent, and we kind of talk about it in the book, but it was 9 where it was the first time I actually got raped, and I made a vow to myself, and as a 9-year-old little girl, I didn't know how I was gonna survive, so I made a huge postulate. I said, "You know, you can take my innocence. You can steal my childhood, but you are never, ever taking the rest of my family from me." Because their threats after every assault, they would say, this is what brothers and sisters do, but it's our little secret. And if you ever tell, you're going to be an orphan. They'll abandon you because you're dirty. They won't believe you. You know, the typical threats that a
Yes,
perpetrator will do.
yes.
And here I am, this young, innocent little girl. I have no idea whether that's true or not, but I did believe them.
Mm.
But I also believed my parents would have believed me, but I also believed that I would have completely destroyed the family, and I didn't want that.
You were close to your mother, right? And your father.
Yeah,
But
my parents were they had me late in life, so
uh-huh,
they were in their late 30s when they had me because I'm the youngest of 5.
uh-huh.
So I don't know if I would say close, close, there's that generational gap, but my parents were wonderful people. They took very good care of me. They had no idea what was going on. My sister Diane was wonderful, my brother Dale, and we're all D's because I was born in the 1960s.
Uh,
That's what we did in America back then.
yes.
But I just here's the dilemma that survivors like me have is if I tell, I'm going to destroy my family.
Hmm.
And if I don't tell, I'll probably destroy myself, and I almost did. And that's part of my story. Like, what happens when you don't tell for 50 years?
Before we get to that, Darlene, there were no signs like your mother wasn't able to understand something, a change in your behavior. Because I'm wondering, as a mother, I have a
Yeah.
10-year-old daughter, and I'm just wondering if something would have happened to her. Wouldn't I be able to just, understand something? You were
Yeah.
so
And I
good
think
at
that's,
hiding it.
yeah. Yeah. I think it's twofold, Anna. I think that as parents, And I think this is a very important message to your viewers. Don't be naive. It can happen anywhere, anytime, in
Mm.
any household. It does not have any race discrimination, income discrimination. And um, I did have a lot of nightmares. And at 9, 10 years old, I was going into my parents' bedroom because, the rape
Mm.
started at 9. So
Yes.
to your point, I would have hoped they would have said, like, why are you having all these nightmares?
Mm.
But back in the 70s, like, parents never talked to us really about problems or about things like that. And I really believed that I was the only little girl in the world that this was happening to. And the shame was
Mm.
so controlling over me
Yes. Mm.
that I did, I believe, a very good job of taking little Darlene when I made that postulate, you know, you're never
Mm.
going to take my family from me. And then I also said, I will never, ever let those brothers see me fail. And in that moment, I took Darlene and I put her in a box. And I said, this is buried. We're not talking about this trauma ever again. I'm going to do whatever I can to stop it. And then I built a brand new, different Darlene on top of that box. You probably hear about this from survivors quite a bit,
Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
child survivors. You've got your inner child, and then you've got who you've been becoming.
Yes. Have you ever wondered whether you were not the only child they had abused? If there were any other
Um,
victims that never
yeah,
came
my brother
forward?
Dale, who's 2.5 years older than me, said no, he was not abused at all. And what research shows is that typically, it's not all the time, typically when it's a sibling abusing another sibling, it doesn't happen outside the home like other forms of child abuse. And it's not generational either. So there was no abuse by my father to my brothers.
No, no, I
Um,
mean, if your brothers abuse another girl, for example.
yeah, they both have daughters. That none of them were ever abused at all. So I believe that it did not occur outside the
Outside the
home.
house. Mhm.
Yep,
Mhm.
yep. I think it's
Yes.
something, and again, research kind of shows that it is typically when it's in the family, it stays in the family. But Anna, SSTA, which is called sibling sexual trauma and abuse, I think it's so important for your listeners to hear how common it is.
It's
Over,
unbelievable. I didn't
yeah,
know that it was common.
yeah, it is. Think of a classroom of 25 children. Research says that at least one is currently getting abused by an older brother or sister. I mean, they believe over 80 million children are currently getting impacted by this, but nobody's talking about it. And that's why I'm coming out after telling my story to help others and parents and teachers and counselors go, talk to all of your children now, have
Mm.
those conversations, because if I had even had an inkling that this was happening to other little girls, maybe I would have told so much sooner. Maybe the
Mhm.
shame
Mhm.
wouldn't have been there. But parents, talk to your kids about the bathing suit zone, and no one is allowed to touch you there. You know what I mean?
Was there, yes, was there a moment during those years when you almost told someone?
Yes. Yes. And I actually did tell someone over the years, Anna. So I actually have CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And I didn't know it until I was 58 years old. So just 2 years ago. But if I look back in my childhood,
Mhm.
my box started leaking because I did have those moments. So 17 years old, the first time I ever had consensual sex, I bawled, I cried, and my boyfriend at the time was like, "What did I do?" And I couldn't let him think he was to blame,
Mm,
so I
mm,
let my secret out. But then I put him in the box saying, "You can't say a word to anybody, not my parents, not my brother." You know? Happened again at 22. I'm in Washington, DC with my girlfriends, 5 of us,
mhm.
for St. Patty's Day weekend. I'm on the dance floor having a great time, and all of a sudden, I'm running off the dance floor, screaming, yelling. I have no memory of actually what this boy did, but it obviously triggered me.
Triggered, yes.
Yeah, and I'm running to my girlfriends. It's so bad that they think he put something in my drink. And, the next morning, I had to confide in them because I'm like, "That wasn't the normal me." Like, I don't know who that was, and so, yeah, over the years, I did
And
leak
what
it to
was their
friends.
reaction?
Oh my gosh. My first boyfriend who I told and those 5 girlfriends, every single one of them believed me, and I
Mm.
really believe those girlfriends, in that moment at 22 years old, they started to save my life. 'Cause they said, "Look, if you're not gonna tell your parents, stop going this alone." And I would say that to anybody who's had trauma or an issue, you don't have to do this alone. So they convinced me to go to therapy for the first time in my life, and I've been going ever since. And,
Do you think children instinctively know how to survive even when no one teaches them?
yes, I think it becomes innate. I think for me, at least, I just had to figure out, like, what am I going to do? And you do hear stories about other, I mean, I have met thousands of other survivors all over the world now. Here I was getting my book out. I thought I would be the first author about this subject, and I'm the eighth author.
Mm.
And it's so interesting that we all have different stories of how our abuse happened, but the traits are incredibly similar.
Tell me
And we
about that.
Yeah. So for example, I don't know if you've noticed, but I have this shoulder twitch when I've
Mhm.
been talking a couple of times. And I have a fellow survivor that when she goes on podcast, her shoulder twitches too. We believe this is our inner child, and we, gone through therapy. That's your little Darlene trying to get out and talk and
Mm.
communicate. Like, who would think that 2 survivors would have the exact same twitch? And it's been
It's
annoying me
unbelievable.
all these years, you know? Yeah.
It's
But
unbelievable.
oh
Mm.
my gosh, yeah. It's so crazy. It's just the commonalities are hypervigilance, always having to be in control,
Mm, mm.
perfectionist, because perfectionism became my survival tool. Being in control became hope for me. If I'm in control of everything around me, I won't get abused. And so many survivors have had to have that.
Yes, yes, yes. So those kind of behaviors were actually trauma speaking, right?
Yes, but it was so interesting. Trauma was speaking to me on my life, and those survival tactics, I believe, helped me become who I am today.
Mm, mm. Mm.
I'm a successful career woman. I've been
Yes.
in sales and marketing for 35 years in the banking industry. So the crazy part is those tactics, hypervigilance, control, never losing,
Mhm.
that became really great being in sales and marketing. But at some point, each one of us has to recognize, if you're carrying a box, it doesn't have to be trauma as bad as mine. It could be a secret. Maybe you cheated. Maybe took
Mhm, mhm.
$20 out of someone's wallet. Maybe you lied to a friend.
Yes.
What I have learned over 50 years of silence, it is not worth holding on to that box. And I can tell you how I was able to release it, Anna, and what pushed me over the edge to
Tell
get
me,
me to
tell
open
me,
up that box.
tell me.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's fast forward to 2021.
Mhm.
Remember, I vowed that my parents were never to know,
Yes.
and they never did find out, and I'm okay with the way I played it.
Mhm.
So it's now 2021, February. My mom's 93 years old. She suddenly dies of a heart attack. My dad is 90. He has dementia. So the threat of them ever finding out is gone.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't think it's a coincidence that only 3 months after that threat is gone, I get a huge argument with my brother Don, who's 5 years older than me, over just care of my dad.
Uh-huh.
As children, it's very difficult when we become that sandwich generation. We're taking care of our kids and we're taking care of our parents.
Mhm.
Things get a little tense,
Yes.
especially if the one of them is not pulling their weight. So, long story short, I try to call him. He won't pick up the phone. I'm like, we have a misunderstanding, but he'll text. He just won't pick up the phone. So the texting keeps going. I try to call again. He won't pick up the phone. At that point, I should have put my cell phone down, but but I think that's when little Darlene came out of the box.
Mm.
And she came out in that text and said, "Look, I'm sick and tired of the way you treat me. If you don't stop treating me the way you are, I can destroy your life if you want me to." And I end the text, "Rapist." It's the first time I've confronted him since I was 12 years old. And now I think, 57 or 56. Guess what his response was, Anna?
What?
Talk about huge ego. His response was, "What are you talking about?" He didn't say these words. His response was, "Go for it right now." Like, if you're just being accused of being a rapist, you would never say go for it if you
No.
didn't do it.
No.
You would pick up the phone and call your sister
Mhm.
going, "What the hell are you talking about?" You know what I mean? And so I went for it. The text exchange is in the book. I was pissed. That girl was now fully out of the box. It's not pretty. I call it the volcano text, but I let loose at that moment, no longer on my older adult brother. I was letting loose on my rapist in that moment. And that was May 1st, 2021. Unbeknownst to me, I have friends who came into town. We're
Mhm.
going out to dinner. I'm at dinner. Well, my brother Don now is proceeding to call all my family members, telling them I've accused him of being a rapist. I'm having a nervous breakdown. I've always been the pathological liar in the family. I mean, none of it is true, but he tried to get the leg up, which again, a perpetrator would often try and do.
Mhm. Of course.
So I'm now at the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I come back and there's like all these text messages and notes from his daughters, his wife, saying he didn't rape me. And I'm like, well, I don't care. He did it to me. You know what I mean? So I decide that I've got to tell my kids. I've been protecting them from this pain for now 25 years.
Mhm.
And I'm like, my secret's out of the box. They're not going to find out from their uncle. They're going to find out from me. So that was I mean, I told both of them, I've been married twice. I did tell both of my fiancés before I got married because I was so embarrassed and ashamed. I didn't think I was worthy
Mm.
of being married because I have felt dirty all my life. That's what they did to me. That's what they do to us. So I write an email to my brothers, nice and calm. My sister ended up passing away in 2008 of cancer. So I email all three brothers and I just do it from calm adult Darlene. And I say, look, here's are the facts. Here's what happened. Here's what you did to me. And I'm including my brother Dale, who didn't assault me. And I even end the email love Darlene. Like, they're my brothers after all. Yes, they
Mhm,
hurt me when I was little, but they had become fine adults later on in life who had children of their own. I thought we could settle this
mhm,
and
mhm.
be done with it. So, of course, they both come back, terrible words back to me, see you next Tuesday, you're this, you're that, you're a liar, all this stuff. But then they leave me alone for 6 months. I think it's over.
It's over. Mm,
Yeah. I think,
yes.
okay, fine. They're out of my life forever, but at least they're leaving me alone. I now get 2 cease and desist letters in the mail from my brother Don saying, "You have to recant everything you said. Admit that it's not true," all that
Uh-huh,
stuff.
mhm.
Well, there was no way in hell I was doing that because I'm telling the truth. And so I finally find a lawyer and he goes, "You know what? Ignore those letters because you're telling the truth. You're never going to recant what you have to say. Let's just see what happens." Well, now it's January 2022. A sheriff shows up at my front door and I'm getting sued by Don for defamation. I know. But my
Before
lawyer
we
is
get into
smarter
that,
than— oh, go ahead, Anna.
how did your children react
Oh, yeah.
when you told
It was a
them?
beautiful moment. Absolutely beautiful. I was so afraid and ashamed. I mean, what mother should be forced to tell this awful thing to their children? And I was so afraid, like, oh my gosh, what are they going to think of me? So I
Mm,
have twin boys who were, I think, 21 at the time. They were home back and forth. And I told them, and it was the complete opposite of what I expected. They're like, "Mom, we love you. We believe you. But why didn't you tell us sooner?
mm.
Because now we get why you've been trying to control our lives all this time growing up,
Everything made
what a mom
sense.
of trauma will do."
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. And then
And
my
your other
daughter—
brother, your third brother?
my third brother, he was kind of playing Switzerland a little bit. He's like,
Mhm,
"I don't have any memories of this. I really shouldn't be involved. I wasn't there. I didn't know." He did say, like, "Darlene, why didn't you tell me?" And I was like, "Well, if I told you, who were you going to tell? Mom and dad." And I didn't want that. I didn't want my life destroyed.
mhm,
And so the lawsuit happens and, well, it's starting to happen. And during the 2.5 year process from getting sued. Now, my lawyer said defense wins championships, but let's put some offense in there. So I countersued my brother for the
mhm, mhm,
same defamation that he was suing me for. So my brother, Don, the one who's suing me, the one who raped
mhm,
me, is trying to get my two brothers to testify against me in the trial. David, the other one who sexually assaulted me, he's wheelchair bound, poor, he's like, "No, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to be a part of that." And then Dale, Don kept pressuring and pressuring, "Look, you have to make a decision." And he said, "You know what? I don't believe you, Don. I believe my sister, Darlene, and I'm on her side." And that was beautiful because so many survivors don't get that. In the
yes,
family, it's the
yes.
it's the survivor who typically gets ostracized from the family,
Mhm, mhm.
you know? So,
So, do you think if they had simply said, "I'm sorry," do you think your life would have taken a different path?
well,
It
it's
doesn't
so
mean that
interesting.
you could forgive them. You can forgive
Right.
them for everything they did, of course. But I'm just saying that at least if
Mm,
if they asked, for forgiveness,
yeah,
they would
yep,
show that they did regret everything they've done
yes,
to you.
yeah. That was the whole point. That's the whole point of this entire story, Anna. All that had to happen was an
An
apology.
apology.
Yeah. I thought by sending that email, I would get the apology that I believed
Mm,
that I deserved. Now, at some point before the email went out, I did talk to David before he knew it was public.
mhm,
And he did give me that apology when he thought it was just me and him talking. He admitted to everything. He said how awful he was and how sorry he was. But as soon as it became public, he recanted,
mm.
and to your point, I believed that I would have been able to forgive. It's 50 years later. You were stupid hormonal teenagers. It doesn't make it right. But if you just admit to what you're doing, I think I could have had peace, could have forgiven. But now
No, it
you've
doesn't make
sued
it
me?
right because you
Yeah,
traumatize a soul, and
yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They have totally traumatized my soul. They ruined my childhood. Uh, You know,
and not
the
only your
traumatic
childhood.
moments. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Was there ever a moment during the trial when you questioned whether telling the truth had been worth it?
Oh my gosh. I love that question because I was raked through the coals for 2.5 years, like I was walking on shards of
Mm,
glass. All of my fears and nightmares that I had gotten rid of through therapy 15 to 20 years earlier now all came flushing back. All the trauma. I am reliving my worst nightmare all over again, but now I'm doing it in my 50s. And during that time, I don't know it. I am now in survival mode. I am pushing away all the people that I love
mm,
because I can't control the trial and what my brother's doing to me.
mhm.
So I'm incredibly argumentative, uptight all the time, trying to control everything. And I'm getting in huge arguments with the people that I love. And I also know, though, that I can't stop because little Darlene deserved a voice.
Mm.
Little Darlene deserved the truth to be heard. And frankly, all survivors need to see someone who won in court.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's why I was pushing it, because Don's lawyers and Don were betting on the fact that I would be too afraid to get on that stand.
Mm,
And I got on the stand, Anna, after 2.5 years, trial delays, negotiations that didn't work. I mean, I tried everything not to go on that stand because I knew how awful it would be. And on January 29th, 2024, a 6-day trial about this begins because my brother was not willing to negotiate, because I said, look, I'm not taking an apology anymore. You've made me spend thousands of dollars.
mhm.
Just pay me half of what I've spent and I won't get on that stand. Well, his ego was so big that he offered me $1 to settle with no apology. Can you imagine?
No, no, I cannot imagine.
I know. So I'm like, see you in court, buddy. $1? I mean, that's an insult.
Of course it
So,
is,
yeah,
no doubt. But you won the case. But you also said that winning wasn't the same as healing.
correct. So I went through the 6-day trial. It's, 5 days for the first trial. The 5th day, I put on the stand for my countersuit. And on February 5th, 2024, in less than an hour, a jury of 12 unanimously decided I was telling the truth, my brother was lying, and I won both cases. And it was amazing. Like, I was so validated. I was in tears. I'm like, oh my gosh, our
Yeah.
team did it. The truth won. But to your point, I thought I would have been healed.
Mhm.
Like, okay, I did it. I'm healed. But no, I had all that resentment, that anger, that bitterness. How dare he sue me? How dare he offer me $1? How
Mhm.
dare he get on that stand and tell all these lies? Well, I had a PTSD moment with my daughter during the trial period. Remember how I said I almost
Mhm.
lost
Mhm.
my family? Like, I ended up actually physically hitting her during an argument where my brain turned her into my rapist's brother. Like, my brain literally put his face there. And I thought I was fighting off my rapist, not her. And it was that low moment in my life that was a huge wake up call that said, if I don't get rid of this box, I will be alone. I will be abandoned and it'll be my own fault because I can't stop what I'm doing.
Mm.
And that's when I turned my life around and said, I can't stop with just the trial. I have to let go of everything. So I did more therapy and I did EFT tapping and I did other tactics. And I realized every single thing I was doing was about my perpetrator. It was about him. I had to shed myself of him and now focus on me and what do I need to be whole and pure and cleansed of this nasty black tar. So I, in that moment, decided I gotta let it all go.
Mm.
I
Mm.
let go of
Yes.
the shame, let go of surviving, let go of all that black tar. And since I've done that, I've decided to write my book as part of letting go. I've decided to become a motivational speaker, as well as go on podcasts like this to continue to tell my story and heal. And my family couldn't be more happy because they say I'm a completely different person than I used to
Mm.
be.
Darlene, what part of healing are people least prepared for when they have been abused?
I believe the one we're least prepared for and the hardest one for us to confront is what I had to do. What am I doing that's causing me to push everyone I love away? It is so difficult and so hard to do, but you have to look within. That's the only way to heal. And the second thing I would say is get rid of whatever box you're holding. Because the only way to find hope in your life is to open up that box. It's how you find joy and hope and peace.
Mm. Mm. But what happens when you're surrounded by your abuser or abusers?
You have to find people that you can trust, you can confide in, like I did. You know those 5 girlfriends I told you
Mhm.
about?
Mhm. Yeah.
Every single one of them testified for me at my trial. That's your support system, you know what I mean?
Yes.
I had
Yes.
a therapist that testified and had a piece of paper that said, "Yes, she told me 25 years ago that her brothers did this." And for me, yeah, I was confronted every day. Well, not every day, because my brother Don lived an hour away from me,
Mhm.
but we were taking care of my parents because we both ironically ended up living in the same community an hour away in Charlotte, North Carolina, trying to take care of our parents who were in their 90s. So I had to pretend, I had to fake it. I had to be that different person like nothing ever happened to me. And at some point, I think every single person who is carrying a box of trauma
Mhm.
or any box, it never stays shut. It's going to explode. It's going to leak. It's going to
Yeah, it's a
blow
matter
up.
of time. Yes.
It's just
Yes.
a matter of time. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
It's not if it'll happen. It is when
When?
it is going to
Mm.
happen. Yeah.
Darlene, if your story could change one thing about how families talk about abuse, what would you want that change to be?
I want families to talk about it now. as young as children, as 3 or 4 years old. I want parents to create a safe space in their household
Mhm.
that says, let's have a conversation about this. This is something that I heard. This is something that I've learned. And again, make it a common vernacular, because I believe that more that we talk about any form of possible sexual abuse, whether it's with a brother or a sister or a parent
Of
or
course.
an aunt or an
Mhm.
uncle or a
Mhm.
teacher, had I known maybe at 7, 8, or 9 years old that this was a thing, like I wasn't the only one, maybe I wouldn't have been so afraid to tell. And that's where we have to start changing the world. That's where we have to start creating safe spaces for our children, because those 80 million children that this has happened to, we got to stop it.
Mm. Mm. Are there any signs that, you know, could reveal the fact that a child is being abused? Something that, you know, you weren't so good at hiding, but maybe your parents didn't.
Yeah,
Uh,
I would say for sure. It's a really great question again. Watch for nightmares. I had nightmares immediately. Watch for, is the child afraid of the dark? I couldn't play. I don't know if you're familiar with this game in the US called flashlight tag, where all the kids are outside and you tag someone with a
uh-huh,
flashlight.
uh-huh.
Okay, I couldn't hide in the dark.
Mm.
I couldn't ever be alone. I think those are signs. Also, many survivors become on edge and very angry. There were so many times where I would like be grasping at a table, at the kitchen table, or playing cards. If you see that tenseness, if you see anger in your children, there's probably something going on. And even as teachers or counselors, why is that kid misbehaving at school? Maybe there's something going on that you should actually ask them about and not just accuse them of being a bad kid.
Mm. Yes. And tell me about your relationship with your brothers now.
So, my two brothers who abused me, they're still both very much alive. I have no communications
Mhm.
with them at all. The one brother who sued me, the jury did award me money to help pay back my legal fees. It has been 2 years. I have yet to see a dime because the court systems are as such in the state of North Carolina. It is such a debacle and a shame. Um, I just, it's a terrible thing. But I
Mm.
do believe, as a country as a whole, we are doing better and getting the message out. There
Mm.
are many organizations on my website, actually, under resources
Mhm. Mhm.
throughout the world, that are trying to get the word out about sibling sexual trauma and abuse. And I think it's just a matter of time before this becomes commonplace.
Yes. Yes. Tell me about your memoir, Shattering Silence. When
Sure.
people finish reading it or listening to this conversation, what do you hope they remember most? The survivor, the fighter, or simply the little girl who deserved to be protected?
All of the above. I mean, while my story does cover some of the trauma in part
Mhm.
one, because I couldn't tell you about who I became if I didn't tell you about my trauma.
Mhm.
And but what I want people to get out of the story is, it's really a book for anybody that's ever had anyone try and steal your voice, your purpose, or your joy. Like, how do you keep going in life when you believe there is no hope? When you think you are walking on shards of glass and there's no way to turn? Read my book, because it shows the resilience. It shows how you can overcome it. and be the best person you can possibly be and have hope and joy and peace. And it's called Shattering Silence,
Hmm.
a story of survival, justice, and the power of telling the truth. It's available on Amazon, or you can get it on my website, but it's also an audiobook in my voice. So I have it out there in all formats for people to really find, wow, this woman went through hell and back. I can do it too. I want people, if I could just help one other person not
Yes.
go through what I went through, then telling the truth as publicly as I have has been worth it.
Yeah. You're so brave, and it's an honor to be able to have you on the show and share your story with everyone. So, Darlene, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And I would leave it to all of your listeners, no matter what is holding you back. It's never too late to tell your story. I didn't do it till I was 58 years old.
Hmm.
And it's never too late to open up the box, because it's the only way you're going to find hope, Anna.
I couldn't agree more. And to all of you out there, as we always say, ego is here, you are here, and that's enough.